In this video, we discuss how to give useful critique in miniature painting. Welcome to Corner Case. You're in the hobby corner. I'm your host, your tabletop minion, your best friend, Deck. And it was about a month ago now that Uncle Adam over at Tabletop Minions made this pretty useful video about how to give and take critique within miniature painting. I love this video. I think if you have not seen this video, I really think you should. After watching this one, link in the description. Pachow. So Uncle Adam and I share a background in design. He's a graphic designer / photographer. I'm an industrial designer. So for us, think of anything that is a physical product. That's what we design. Anything from toothbrushes to cars. You can call me your miniature gaming Mark Newson. In design, the work is qualitative. So we use critique as a way to progress the work forward. We're not taking tests. There aren't any right answers objectively, like a math problem. There are a set of constraints, and the design has to satisfy all of those constraints and stakeholders, and it's uneven. So critique is the best way to discuss and progress what is a good design. So Uncle Adam's video covers more about like the social component of giving feedback. Like if you're in a game store setting, you see somebody's paints are a little too thick, how do you kind of work yourself into that situation so that you're not giving unwelcome and unsolicited feedback, unsolicited feedback, how to be tactful. I think this is still absolutely great. What I want to do in this video here is talk about tactics. What do you do? How do you give good feedback? Because you can't just assume that your feedback is good. So step one of a successful critique is you must understand the goals of the project. This is where the unsolicited advice comes in. If you are giving unsolicited advice, chances are you may not understand that person's goals. You may think that you do, but a lot goes into a person's situation. So the first step is understanding and being sensitive to those various situations that people are in. I will say, I think it's an easy trap for people to fall into, to think that there is an objective good paint job that we all are trying to get to. I think especially within the Games Workshop ecosystem, the heavy metal paint style is really well distributed. It's easy to get into, really well consumerized, really streamlined. So especially if you're within that kind of paradigm of Games Workshop stuff, it might be easy to think that like, okay, we're all trying to get to this box art kind of look, so I'm going to give you feedback on how to get there. But just remember that miniature painting is, at the end of the day, kind of an art project. So everyone's goals are really personal, and they are their own main customer that they are trying to satisfy. So when you're trying to understand somebody's goals, you can ask questions to understand their situation better. Some parts of their situation might be inferred, like, are they more of a hobbyist or are they more of a gamer? Sometimes you can kind of tell this, especially if this conversation is happening post-game. You kind of know how they feel when they play. There's definitely got to be like some video out there about being stereotyped in our hobby, but I definitely stereotype people into either being a hobbyist or a player. And I usually think that the players suck at the hobby and the hobbyists sometimes kind of suck at the gaming component. Anyway, ask questions. You can also ask leading questions conversationally. Here are some examples. You can ask questions like, oh, what type of minis do you like? Or do you like any specific mini painters? Or something more leading and conversational like, oh, I really like this painter. Actually, I think your stuff kind of reminds me of theirs. Do you like them already? Or just remove their work from it entirely. You might think that they're leaning towards like a type of style with their current paint job, and you don't even tell them that you're their work. You just say, oh, I really like this painter. Do you like them too? Now, when you talk about these separate painters, these separate YouTubers, you're kind of like removing them as a subject of the conversation, but you're able to talk about the work in a way that naturally leads you into talking about like what type of painting this person might be into, and how early are they in their hobby journey? And it naturally leads into a discussion of techniques like, oh, this painter really likes using oils, blah, blah, blah. What do you think about that? So by just putting out there, talking about a specific different painter, that already helps you indirectly ascertain their goals and aspirations as painters. Or you could find out that they're more of the gamer side and they are just trying to paint to play. And in which case, maybe the conversation, if you really are intent on giving any feedback, maybe the conversation goes into efficiency and speed painting instead. Oh, I really like Midwinter Mini's way of doing the speed paints, or I like this guy's way of doing the speed paints. So If you just went in with your paints are too thick, have you tried thinning your paints without understanding this person's situation, then you probably already missed the mark. But let's say you have this conversation, about goals, and you come to understand, oh, you're trying to paint this whole Blood Angels army by next month so that you can hit tournament and it's going to be your first tournament, and you only have enough budget this month for this many paints. Well, then your feedback becomes more about how to solve that problem. So maybe actually you were lucky and your thin your paints comment was correct because, okay, well, they only have so many paints. They have to paint this whole army. They have to do it by next month. Okay, in which case, yeah, thinning your paints will get you more paint. But you might realize that, oh, actually, they just need to rattle can, like red primer these Blood Angels, and that will actually get them way farther, way more quickly, potentially for less money than doing the actual paint from pot method. So that's where understanding your person's goals first helps you give better, more appropriate feedback. And that's the next topic we're going to cover is language. So there is a difference between a compliment and a critique. Compliments are not strictly useful to progressing the work. Socially, they are important so that you can build rapport with your audience. But if you are in a strict design critique setting, oh man, the old heads, the old designers will throw your models out the window for using such language. You do not say you like something because it's not useful. So that's like the traditional methodology. Traditionally, the words we use are appropriate and not appropriate. So to take it back to design, you're often designing a product for a specific person or consumer. You are designing it within the constraints of a brand identity and behavior. You have cost, time, feasibility constraints, and all of these stakeholders are uneven. And so what is good design is the weird amoeba that fits within this awkward space. And so you can never strictly say that a design is good or not good. Goodness is along a spectrum. How appropriate is that design decision towards, any one of these constraints or goals? So as an example, you might say, oh, you want your amphibious guardsman army to look like a murky tide washing up onto shore. If that's the case, then the blue represented on the test model may not be the most appropriate blue. Maybe it's too saturated, which leads into another part of the language you use when you give critique is removing agency. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, but by removing the agency of the creator from the work and talking strictly about the work as it exists independently from its creator, that also helps make feedback more palatable. So you'll notice I said the blue represented on the test model. So as an example, a bad example would be, why did you pick that blue? Or your choice of blue was not appropriate to your goal. So even though I'm still using the words appropriate and I still understand the goal, by delivering with the you words and the your words, it adds the agency back in and it can make the critique feel accusatory or personal. To summarize our best practices on how to give critique, the first is understand the person's goals and the goals of the project. 2, what is good work is only along a spectrum of goodness or appropriateness to the program goals. And 3, you take the agency out by removing your statements and talking strictly about the work as it stands by itself. All right, I hope that was a useful yes and to Uncle Adam's video about critique. Link in the description, pachow. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. I read and respond to almost all of them. Otherwise, please do all the YouTube things, like and subscribe, join the Discord and hang out with us, join the Patreon if you would like to. Otherwise, see you next time.
I am ready to subscribe again.